Folks, you've joined me in mid-conversation with Stuart Stevens, former Republican advisor. He is currently with the Lincoln Square and the Lincoln Project, and we just got us in mid-conversation where if you saw my conversation yesterday with Jamie Raskin and then later with Mehdi Hassan, Mehdi, I talked about Stewart's piece about these bold, radical actions Dems must take to take back our weakened country. It's been generational damage already, folks. But these are the type of bold actions that Dem leaders must campaign on and promise and then do once and if, inshallah, they could ever win the midterms, and take the House and the Senate. And it's a great piece, which I will link to. And for those who, I was telling Stewart, I talked to Congressman Raskin yesterday, who I really like, and I pressed him on this. What's the Democratic leadership doing? What are the plans? And folks, I like Raskin, but I didn't really get an answer. And so, Stewart, before we go back and forth, I yield the floor to you. Just some top news from today. America first, making America great again. We just found out a couple hours ago that in this country, when an ally like South Korea pours $8 billion in a red state, and let's just say Georgia, and creates a Hyundai plant, this administration will send the largest immigration raid to arrest those 450 employees of that said nation, just to, make America great again. And because of these amazing trade wars and tariff policies, now the August job numbers are at their lowest since 4 years. Unemployment has gone up. America's brand has nosedived 18 points, where it went from positive 15 during Biden January to now -3. Credit rating is down. And so I have heard, who am I? I'm an English major, but I have heard, Stuart, and you've consulted elected officials' campaigns. It's the economy, stupid. And I also know that scandals also hurt presidencies. And so for me, Stuart, and again, I'm an unfrozen caveman lawyer, a simple man. I see the polls. Trump is underwater across the board, underwater in immigration, overreach, National Guard, all of it's unpopular. To me, his two Achilles cankles, his two Achilles heels, as of today, prove positive, the economy. And again, as of today, because I'm sure, like me, you saw that Project Veritas video that exposed this incompetent Justice Department official who, on a hinge date, as one does on a random hinge date, straight up openly admitted the plot to cover up the Epstein files and hide the Republican name. So, Stuart, if I'm a Democratic leader, I would say, okay, drastic poll numbers, disastrous economy, and the one bipartisan issue, a scandal uniting independents, Republicans, and Democrats with a friggin' smoking gun, the Epstein files. Surely I will have a plan, a message, and a strategy to fight back. And so far, all I've seen them do is attack Zoran Mamdani. Stuart, you got so pissed off.
Well,
You
yeah,
got so pissed off that you wrote an article. So I yield the floor to you.
now, yeah, well, you have to realize what a threat this guy is. He's talking about maybe having 5 city-run grocery stores. When now as Republicans, we're out nationalizing Intel, which, I mean, let me get this straight. So 5 city-run grocery stores versus nationalizing a key industry. Um,
MAGA socialism is good. Democratic socialism is a threat, Stuart.
yeah, listen, I think that it goes to what motivates people to vote. And one of the things I said in the story is you can't approach voters as if you're calling on people to do jury duty as some, you know, tedious civic duty. There has to be something about voting that brings out passion, that brings out uh, a desire to go out there. And part of that is what do you get when you vote?
That's right.
And I think Trump was able to connect with this certain percentage of overwhelmingly his base is non-college educated white voters, and I don't think we talk about race enough in all of this. And what Democrats need to do is they need to say, "Look, this is what you're going to get, and there's
That's right.
going to be stuff here that is tangible, that is don't shy away from making people feel that we're going to have vindication here." So I just reeled off a few. You're mad at this South African fuck, pudgy South African fuck running around Elon Musk. We should nationalize Starlink. We should nationalize SpaceX. I mean, we ought to do that anyway, just because clearly these are in national security interest, and clearly you have a very unstable guy. We already know how he's influenced the war to the detriment of Ukraine with turning off Starlinks. You need to have very specific things that you're going to do. I mean, launch, speaking of Congressman Raskin, very detailed plans of this wide sweeping investigation into corruption. I mean, I was thinking about it. There was a time when we actually thought that you had to release your tax returns.
Right.
And we don't even, and Trump promised to do that, of course. We don't even talk about that now. And now you have where they're making billions of dollars over the weekend and like, oh, well, whatever, doesn't matter. So Raskin needs to do that. Um, you you have to give people a sense of what they're going to get. I think this plan of a wealth tax would be overwhelmingly popular. Put it over. I think Elizabeth Warren had it over. I forget the exact number, but I've never seen a poll that if you're going to do some kind of tax on anything over a couple of $1 million, it's not overwhelmingly popular. And I would target that a certain percentage of that is going to go to Social Security to guarantee Social Security. And while they're at it, they probably ought to do it to help fund Medicaid. Um, they need these very specific ideas to run on. That look, this is what you're going to get. Um, if you go back to 1994 with the Contract for America, it was a very specific plan, and eh, the I think in many ways the 24 elections completely misunderstood. Yeah, on election day, the right track of the country was 27%. No incumbent party's ever been elected when it's below 45.
Yep.
You had the job approval of the president at 40%. No incumbent party's ever gotten 2 points higher than that. So they did a lot better. So what does that tell us? It tells us it was an environment for a challenger to win. Trump was a challenger. We have numbers that would show a Nikki Haley, who's probably not having a great day in South Carolina today, um, would have done better. So don't confuse that with an endorsement of Trumpism. They knew that Project 2025 was poison, and now that they're making people drink it, it's not going down any easier. This is how people end up worshiping volcanoes. There's a drought, the volcano belches, it rains. Next thing you know, you're hurling virgins into the volcano. No, no, no. This is not causality. But we're going to have change elections for the foreseeable future if the right track of the country is under 30. I mean, whoever can offer the most sweeping change is probably going to win. And now you could have made a case, I think, that what Democrats need to do is get in, remind people what a sane governing party is like, have positive plans for the middle class, and America will realize, my God, this Trumpism, all of this, it was an aberration, not a destiny. That's very logical. The problem is we did that. That's exactly what President Biden did. It was a very successful presidency. And what do we get? Millions and millions and millions of people didn't turn out to vote for Harris. Um, so I think they need to do this. I don't understand the sort of tentativeness with the Democratic Party. Um, you know, when I was a Republican, we won a lot of races that we had no business winning because we really went to the emotion of issues
Yep.
rather than the sort of substance of it. Um, and I think that that's something that Democrats now are well positioned to do. I mean, look, the pro Putin party, the pro Russian Federation party, the party that's really been compromised by the Russian Federation, which I think is a great underreported story of our time, is the Republican Party.
Yep.
The Republican Party is the one that's out there nationalizing industries. The Republican Party is the one that's putting military in our cities. You remember, 10 years ago, there was this crazy thing about Jade Helm where there
Mm.
was this where some plans listed for a military maneuver that they were using Texas as a possible plan, and the right wing went crazy that this is a secret plan that they were going to stage in Walmarts and all of this. I mean, what's happening now, what Trump really is doing is everything that Alex Jones warned about,
That's
Trump
right.
is actually doing. You
Well,
have this
actually, Kristi Noem, Kristi, just 2024 Biden presidency. Kristi Noem, now the Department of Homeland Security, the head of the head of Department of Homeland Security. She went on Fox News, Sean Hannity, and warned. warn President Biden, you better not nationalize the
Right.
guards and unleash them. Literally, it's all projection all the time. And turn around 6 months later, and that same Kristi Noem is perfectly fine with Donald Trump unleashing the National Guard and the military against the American people.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I said, take ICE, take the money that's funded for ICE, turn it into block grants to hire more cops. It would be one of the really popular things that Bill Clinton did, put 100,000 more cops on the street. Um, and it really helped the image of the Democratic Party. So I think it's a historic opportunity for the Democratic Party to become again, as it was for a long time, the party of strength in national affairs, in international affairs, to be the party that really is not the billionaire party. Um, and, there shouldn't be any hesitancy about using these broad, sweeping characterizations of what the Republicans are doing. I don't think that you can be a patriot and vote for Pete Hegseth. You can't. You can't be a patriot and put the town drunk in charge of the United States military. So I would say to John Thune, You're not a patriot." I mean, I've known John Thune since he's executive director of the Republican Party in South Dakota. You never would have believed he would do this, but they are. They've all completely abdicated. And if you just take Hegseth, take Roger Wicker. I've
Yep.
known him all my life, Mississippian. Uh, uh, Roger, his entire life, his great ambition was to be chairman of the Armed Services Committee, which he is now. What does he do? Usher in Pete Hegseth. I mean, he could have gone to Trump and said, "Look, there's 317 million Americans. We don't have to put a town drunk. There's plenty of people that have really good conservative credentials, that have lots of credibility in the military. Nominate somebody who's not some drunk weekend anchor whose own mom has problems with." And Trump would have done it. But they won't stand up to Trump. And we've never seen anything like this. So I just think that, if I ran the Democratic Party, I would wake up every day and say, "We're right, they're wrong." Give up this idea that you're going to ever get these people to vote for you.
Nope.
Somehow there's this hangover because, Clinton used deplorables that you had to sort of play around with this and you couldn't say other things. Like right now on the issue of race, Republicans get all the benefit of racism without any of the negatives. Nobody is out there calling Republicans racist. And
I am.
you are, yes. God bless you. Um, but just think about it. If a year ago, if you and I were here and we said, look, a year from now, you're going to have masked men chasing gardeners through Brentwood with a budget larger than the Marines. You're going to have armed troops in the cities. All this. We would have said, "You're crazy." I mean, people would have said, "We're crazy." It's not going to happen. Um, so if you really,
Stuart, you said a lot, and we're in agreement. I'm going to parcel it down for folks that are joining us. This again, Stuart Stevens wrote a really good article, and he talked about some of the examples that he gave. But before we dive deep to the example, because you actually do give concrete example steps that you think Democrats can take and can run on right now. But looking at the big picture, right? And I
yeah,
think you might agree with me on this, because based on what you just said and your article. Fundamentally, what the Democrats need is a reformation, not a restoration. They have there's
well put.
underneath 30% of their own base. They have the brand is sinking. Majority of Dems don't have faith in the leadership, and this is where I think this is what you saw and what I've been saying for a while is the type of unspoken civil war in the Democratic Party. What is the character of the Democratic Party? What are the intentions and the messages of the Democratic Party? So two things that you've talked about, I think, and you also mentioned it in your piece. And I want to take it separately. Let's talk. I want to talk about messaging, and I want to talk about character. Let's talk about the character in the opening of your piece. You mentioned essentially civility politics. Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was all about restoration. What he did good, I give him praise. But I said, you need now reformation. The time for restoration is over.
Yeah,
Young people are like, this doesn't work for me. I don't give a shit about these institutions. I don't even give a shit about these political parties. Give me something new, which is why Zoran Mamdani, they don't even care that he's a democratic socialist. Folks, they didn't even care that Bernie was a Democratic socialist. A lot of the people who voted for Bernie voted for Donald Trump, not caring that this man is completely unqualified, had no business running for president, but he was an anti establishment figure, all bullshit. But that's how he promoted himself. And you would be a bulldozer who would clean the deep state. All bullshit. But nonetheless, folks, look at the overlap. Look what attracted people. Anti establishment person, right? So the first thing before I get to the message, and I have a message I want to test it out with you, it's the character. The character you mentioned in your piece, and you gave all these statistics, right? Joe Biden, I'm reading from your piece. Joe Biden took office. I pledge this to you. I will be the president for all Americans. I will fight as hard for those who did not support me for as those who did, end quote. And you said, MAGA said, fuck you. We don't want your help. Or as you said, let's go, Brandon. Or as I say through the QAnon conspiracy, you are a devil worshiping, sex trafficking pedophile, and we want to kill you, right? So what we've seen is civility politics where Stewart, they still try to win over. I call him Chet. In my mind, I have Chet. Chet is this guy. He's a white dude who drinks real coffee with a MAGA hat, with his gun in his truck, and he's drinking real coffee in a real diner in the heartland because urban diners aren't real. And Democrats want to win over Chet. They'll do anything to win over Chet. They'll throw black people under the bus, transgender people under the bus, immigrants under the bus, Muslims under the bus, unions under the bus. They want to win over Chet. And Chet says, "I think you're a pedophile. If I could, I would kill you." And they said, "Oh, some people didn't like that we were deplorable. And we have to be nice and let's reach across the aisle." And I believe, let's talk about character first. The character of the Democrat that seems to galvanize the majority is the fighter, the person who fights. And I will give you one example before I give it to you, because you're the expert on this. Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, like so many Democrats, thought, let me find the liberal Joe Rogan. Let's attack the woke. Let me platform on my podcast. Folks, on his podcast, he platformed Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, agreed with their talking points. All right, you know what MAGA said? Fuck you, you cuck. You're a weak piece of shit. Look, they straight up, folks, we talked about on the left hook, they mocked Gavin Newsom. So whenever you try to go Republican light, the Republicans mock you for being a pussy. I'm talking like them. And then Democrats lose you. Then Gavin Newsom said, oh, this didn't work. So now that California is being attacked because he's unleashed the National Guard and ICE to terrorize Californians, he decided to become a fighter. He's fighting back. Stuart, you've seen the polls. I've seen the polls.
Yeah.
Popularity has gone up. People are like, at least you're doing something. He said, all right, mother effers, you're gerrymandering? Fine. I'll do something I never thought I'd do. We'll redistrict. California, most populous state, my home state, 40 million people. All right, mother effers, you want to take 5 seats? I'll take more seats. That that talk to me about the spirit and the character of a fighter.
Yeah, look, in politics, strong and wrong will always be weak and right. But you can also be strong and right. But the key is that you can't be seen as weak here.
Mm.
You have to go out and fight. And I think one of the really positive signs here is that Newsom is being rewarded for this. And usually politicians will do what's in their best interest of all brands. So others look at him, they see what Pritzker's doing as well, and they're basically they're in an invisible primary for the nomination to run against a Republican who maybe Trump very well running another term, and they're being rewarded for it. Um, I don't understand this. Your diner obsession is great. Somehow or another, they ended up sending the best journalists in America to diners in Ohio to figure out why they voted for Trump. I mean, to me, this is like sending the best journalists of America to strip clubs to figure out why men go to strip clubs. I think we know. I
I
don't
think they
think
like the drinks. They like the drinks.
they like the drinks. I don't think we, need to really think about this. Um, and you should go out and characterize it. I think you need to say these are bad people. Yeah, someone who supports headsets, someone who supports RFK, that's a bad person, and don't hesitate to do that. Um, and you're not going to bring this country together by just trying to be nice to everybody. You need to be, we're right, they're wrong. You need to go out and say why they're wrong. You need to go out and say that they are anti-American. I mean, we never hesitated to do this in the Republican Party. I mean, God help us, I have a lot of regrets. I've written a book about it, but we
It's a
did it
very good book.
because we did it because it was effective, that we could go out and do that. So, if you go back to Bush running against Dukakis, you were able to present Bush as literally wrapped in the flag against Dukakis, and Dukakis actually was a very good governor, but you could do these big things, and that's what they need to do. I thought Harris had some moments of that. I thought in her, acceptance speech, there was moments about that, and don't the thing that drove me, like, the way that Republicans were able to use the transgender issue, and the Democrats never fought back. You know,
Never.
over oh, oh, over at the Lincoln Project, finally out of frustration, we made an ad. It was the simplest pushback ever. This policy was adopted under Trump's hand-picked head of prison bureau. And as far as anybody knows, it's happened once. That's it. So this is just Trump lying. And we made this ad. We gave it to the big super PAC Future Forward. We had, in the end, almost $1 billion. They loved it. We waited about a week, and guys, it wasn't running. We call them. They go, "Well, it didn't test well." And it's like, do you think Willie Horton tested well? No, but did it work? Yes. So you have to go out and fight back on this stuff. And as a little test of that, every Senate candidate, incumbent or challenger, who was attacked on the transgender issue, who responded, and most of them did it on camera, won. And everyone who didn't, like in Pennsylvania, lost. Now, that's not the only reason, but you can fight back on this stuff. Um,
Can you tell us who Kentucky's governor is?
so I can tell you who Kentucky's governor is. I work with his dad, Bashir's.
Andy
Um,
Bashir. Okay, so and Kentucky is a red state, right? And Andy Bashir is a Democratic governor of Kentucky who actually responded to the LGBTQ hate and fear mongering. Even wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about it after Trump won. Stuart, can you connect the dots?
exactly. I don't I don't understand this tentativeness about the Democratic Party. Um, and look, I spent a lot of years pointing out flaws in the Democratic Party, but it is the only pro-democracy party in America. It's really
Yep.
it's the only political party in America that really is a traditional political party. The Republican Party has become an extremist movement.
Yep.
I mean, it's better to compare it like to the Red Guard and Khmer Rouge. What do we know? It wasn't that those movements didn't end because like a moderate element of the Red Guard emerged. They're only going to become more extreme. You're only going to have increased purity tests. So, I mean, if you just look at the Republican Party, if you, there's senators there that grovel in front of Trump, knowing that Trump sent a mob into their workplace to try to kill them. So, if you're willing to look beyond that, you think that Trump's gonna cross some line, like, on policy or ethics? It's gonna be, "Well, that's too much," his position on the Law of Sea Treaty, that's it, I've had it. But once you're willing to support somebody that tried to kill you, you're not gonna it's just and we've never seen.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to add on, but it reminds me of, look, you said emotions. You said we got people through emotions. And I'm a writer, I'm an English major, and I break things down with stories. And for me, we talked about the character, right? So let me step back for a second. And this is why how I've been mapping it out for a while. Human beings are storytelling animals. In a story, classic story, there's a hero who has a goal. The hero wants to get somewhere. There's a villain, the villain that impedes the goal. So you have to identify who the hero is.
Yep.
You have to identify who the villain is. And then you have to tell people how that villain is keeping you from getting the goal. So the hero that people want, and you mentioned, we just established it, is a fighter. Okay, we want someone who's going to punch back. We want someone who's going to say F you. As you mentioned in your piece, stop being polite. When they go low, we go high. Even Michelle Obama, folks, has moved on. She goes, yeah, that was then. I say when they go low, you take them out by their knees, which is a illegal UFC move. But that's not enough, Stuart. I'm glad you mentioned this because I don't want unethical, corrupt fighters and brawlers who will simply, go back in whiplash. I want ethical, committed fighters who promise to uplift the people and who are promising not restoration, or they're promising, in fact, reform. Now, regardless of what you think of Zoran Mamdani, he stands for something. I want to repeat this. He stands for something. Even when he was like, I interviewed him when he was like distant number two for Zateo. He's like, this is my platform. This is what I stand for. Yes, I said free buses. Yes, I said there shouldn't be billionaires. Billionaires exist. I'll work with them. I want to make New York affordable. I want to make New York affordable. I want to make New York affordable. People should afford to have groceries. The rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer. Okay, the story, the message, what he stands for, make America affordable again. What did Bernie Sanders run on? The rich are getting richer. Everyone else is getting left behind. The establishment isn't helping you out. People who voted for Trump also voted for Bernie. People who voted for Trump in 24 also voted for AOC. People who voted for Trump, folks, also are now voting for Mamdani. The Fight the Oligarchy tour, now Graham Planter, who's taking on Susan Collins, who's very
Yep.
concerned. She should be concerned. He's going on this message, the anti establishment economic populist message. That to me is the story. The story is simple. We, the good guys, the 99% are going against the 1%. We, the workers, are going against the broligarchy. We, the average Jose's, are going against these pudgy South African freaking racist, eugenic, mother effing billionaire friends like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, right? These guys are drinking our milkshake. I want to have more milkshake. They're drinking our milkshake. That, I think, should be the message, Stuart. It's right up there for the taking. It's right there. And the reason, and I said this to Raskin yesterday, I've said this to Democrats. I think this is one of the Achilles heels of the Democrats, and the reason why you're seeing the split in the Democratic Party, because the leadership is unwilling to stop sucking at the teat of corporate dollars, corporate money, and the oligarchy. They're unwilling to take this winning message that has been in front of them for 10 years, Stuart. You might disagree with me, but I think this fighter that we have defined has to, if you will, vocalize this message to get to their goal and identify the villain that can unite even a lot of white voters who went for Trump. I want your take on this.
Yeah, look, I think I think it's worse in a way. I don't think it's just money. And I've become a radical in campaign finance. I would have campaign finance limits, federal funding for all races that are federal. I've worked in the system when we had that for the presidential race and when
Yeah.
we didn't. And it was so much better when we had it, when you had a limit to the amount of money you could spend. I've worked in other countries where you have limits on it, and I'm completely radicalized on it. But I don't think it's. I think it's more. It's not just that. That is an element because they have to raise money and all this in the same way that Republicans are beholden to the NRA. But ultimately, Republicans are for the NRA because they like guns
Yep.
and not the money. And when the money became Russian, they still took it. But it. I think they have this sense that they get into the Senate and they get into the House, and it's this club, and they want to get along with these people, and they don't want to go out and offend people. And it's somehow this idea that you can kind of muddle your way to victory. I don't get it. I mean, for all the talk of Clinton winning in '92, which is the economy stupid, that is true, but it's inadequate to say that. It really was just a change election.
Mm,
And the economy was a way to do it so you weren't always saying change, change, change. But once that race became about change, it's a race George Bush couldn't win because he could be a lot of things. I mean, it could have been a race about experience. It could have been a race about leadership. It could have, but once it became about change, a guy who had every position to have in Washington, son of a senator, was not going to beat an obscure governor from Arkansas. You weren't. I mean, that was it. And so I think that they have to, the Democratic Party just needs to have that passion. And I think that it's less ideology that's drawing a lot of people to the Bernie and AOC as their passion.
that's right.
They they're
Fighters.
out there fighting for something, and, it's okay to have differences. It's okay to say, "Look, I'm running for mayor of Indianapolis, and I'm not gonna be for 5 grocery stores, but I'm gonna be for fixing the city. I'm gonna do this." That's what people buy into. I think politicians, in many ways, are a lot like comics. It's their attitude
That's right.
less than the specific jokes. It's like, how are you entering this argument? Um, and the great cancer here is the idea that you can poll or research your way to a message. Like, I'm going to take a poll that's going to remind me of my deeply held beliefs. Let me tell you, man, I don't remember seeing a poll that in 7 showed hope and change as the number one issue in America, and a guy ran and he made it the number one issue. And that's if you're gonna get one thing you know about politics is if you want people to believe it, you have to believe it. And you have to dig the ditch you're gonna die in. You have to be willing to say,
Right.
I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna win on this, but this is what I believe. And go out and say that. Um, and I listen, I there's a lot of talk that you hear about how Republicans are better at messaging. We I've always thought that was true, but inadequately true. It's so much easier to message as a Republican because you're messaging to a very homogeneous audience. It's like putting on a concert for people that like one kind of music. The Democratic Party have people that like a lot of different kinds of music, now, which ultimately is its greatest strength because it is a lot more like America. But you have to be able to unite that. Um,
Okay, Stuart, can I give you an example of why I think Zoran taps into this? The reason why I think Zoran encapsulates what you're saying is because he's like, this is what I stand for.
yeah,
This is what I believe in. I'm willing to articulate this consistently, even if I'm number two, even if no one's given me a chance, even though I'm an outsider. This is what I stand.
I'll lose on this issue. I'll lose on
I
this.
will lose on
Yeah,
Gaza. I will lose on free buses. I will lose on tax the billionaires. I will lose on not taking corporate money. I will lose on being a joyful warrior. Yes, I am a brown skinned son of immigrants. Yes, I am Muslim. That is fine. I am authentic. I am sincere. I'm a joyful warrior. I take them on with a smile. I will knock on doors. I will make my pitch to anyone who's listening. And my pitch is I don't care if you vote for me or don't vote for me, if you're this or that. I think we all agree. We all live in New York. New York should be affordable. And these rich mother effers are taking up all of our money, and maybe that money should trickle down. Why not? Why can't a Dominican mom afford the bus? Why can't a Chinese grocer, feel like they can't pay rent? Why can a white kid feel like they can't afford college? So listen, you might not agree with me and everything, but do you agree with me that the rich are getting richer and everyone else is getting screwed and we should make the city affordable and we should have some bold ideas? Okay, maybe I can't make free buses. I'll just who gives a shit? Promise it. Donald Trump says all this crazy shit, then he gets power. This is one thing I've always given Republicans credit for, Stuart. When Republicans get power, they don't give an F. They don't care about their base. They don't care about the polls. They don't care about what anyone else is saying. They goes, "We got power. Stop us. What are you going to do? Tax cuts for the rich. Super, super unpopular. We don't give a shit. Stop us. Nationalizing the military and unleashing it. Stop us. We hate socialism. I'm going to take a 10% of Intel. Stop me. I'm going to drain the swamp. No, me and my family are going to get $5 billion and get rich off of this crypto grift that might friggin' just burn down the country. Stop us. Democrats get power and they're like, boo, what does Chet in the diner think? And I want them to flex. I want them to flex, stand for something, be passionate, be authentic. And I agree with you. We're seeing it with Zoran, just a great test case. AOC before her, even Trump on the opposite side. People respond to personality, they respond to attitude, they respond to authenticity, they respond to passion. It's how politicians make them feel. And if people feel optimistic, if people feel you will fight for them, if people feel you will fight for change, hope, change, hope, change, right? They'll say, all right, let's give it to this guy, this Barack Hussein Obama. Um, I feel, Stuart, it's there for the taking. And what pains me is, and I want your take on this because I think this is political malpractice. Whatever you think of Mamdani, all right, I can't see Republicans doing this. Republicans, if they saw a Mamdani, let's say a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, by the way, I predicted would be mainstream. Everyone thought I was wrong. This is the world's worst. I told you so. Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're like, she's a freak, but she's our freak and she's popular. All right, we'll embrace her. The Democratic leadership right now, Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer, it's clear that Zoran Mamdani is going to be the next mayor. It's clear he's ascending. It's clear young Jews are even going for him. Okay, they have spent more time attacking Mamdani than attacking Trump. Your take as an outsider, looking at, in my words, if you disagree with me, please, political malpractice by the Democratic leadership.
yeah. Look, the guy ran. He won the Democratic primary. You're for the Democrat. That's who you should be for. They had a race. I bet if you were polling in that race, as I'm sure they were, They went ahead the night that Bill Clinton endorsed Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
It was like a Tyrannosaurus Rex endorsing like some pterodactyl or something. It was like 2 dinosaurs out there. Um, and, it doesn't hurt. I ran into him the night after he won. I was at NBC and, the way you run into people in the green room. Now, look, my experience is that the night after people win an upset, they're in a good mood. They kind of are feeling at their best. But he was incredibly charismatic and charming and all of this. And look, my feeling about the guy is he's a very different kind of character than Bernie. Bernie doesn't care if you like him or not. I mean,
Mm.
I've known Bernie forever. I live in Vermont. I went to college in Vermont. First time I saw when I was riding my bike when I was in college on the main street of Burlington, and there was this lunatic out there yelling about rent control, and it was Bernie running for mayor when he won by 8 votes. And he actually was a great mayor, as it turns out. But he doesn't care. I think that he does want people to like him, which I think is not a bad thing. So if he goes out and he tries something and it fails, I don't think he's going to have this rigidness and say, okay, like didn't work having 5 grocery stores, so we're gonna have 20. I think he'll adjust. Um, and this kind of like, why is there this civil war inside the Democrat? How is it that we have a lunatic Republican president who's appointing these Russian stooges, drunks, weirdos, and freaks that are killing people across our government, and we're having a discussion about what's wrong with the Democratic Party? How did this happen? I mean, look, you lost a race. That happens. You're supposed to lose races. I mean, to have a democracy, somebody has to be willing to lose. That doesn't mean you were wrong. And you lost with a person who would have been a very good president, who
Yeah.
ran a very respectable campaign. It was not a scandal or anything. She lost. Okay. Don't then go into this identity crisis about how do we fix this? How do we do that? Um, the first time you attack, if it doesn't work, the next time you attack harder. And this pursuit of a perfect message, I think, is one of the great fallacies of politics. There's never a perfect message. There's never a perfect spot. What it is you have to just be willing to go out there and say stuff with passion and show people that you care about them. And look, I've always thought that the Trump coalition on election day was like a Fabergé egg because
Mm.
for MAGA, if he didn't have an army of masked men chasing gardeners through Brentwood, MAGA was going to be upset. If he had an army of masked men chasing Brentwood, Hispanics that voted for him are not going to really like this, and a lot of other people aren't going to like him, and that's happening. Um, it he got 87% of African Americans voted against him. All right, that was better than a typical Republican. You know, Goldwater got 7% of black vote. Trump in 20 got 8%. That's 1 point in 56 years. But I don't think that I don't think this election was any kind of realignment race at all.
He barely
Um,
won. He barely won,
he
and he
barely
didn't crack
won.
50.
Yeah. And so
And
look,
people stayed
I
home.
don't see, I
And
don't, how do
Stuart,
you
people
meet,
people stayed home. People stayed home because they weren't inspired, Stuart.
they didn't have a sense of what they're going to get. Yeah. I could not agree with you more about this. Like, how do you meet the guy in the Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt standing in the Capitol halfway? I don't want to. You should be proud of the people who hate you. You should be proud that the people who are haters hate you. Dine out on that, saying, I don't want their vote if that's what they're doing, you know? So, I don't know, I think that the odds are overwhelming that Democrats will take the House. It's what are they going to do when they take the House that is gonna be
That's
so critical?
that's the key. That's the key, and this is why there's a civil war, and my answer to your question of why the Democratic leadership has been unable to lead and meet the moment and has taken advantage of the changing tides. Things change, folks. Young people are done. They don't care about Democrat, but they don't care.
Yeah.
Democratic Socialist, Democrat, Republican, conservative. They're like, will you make my life better? Great. They don't care about the institutions because the institutions have failed them. Look at all the polls when it
Yeah.
comes to young people and their faith in the institutions. It's really depressing. It's all the way down. They literally said, who will make my life better? And the reason I think is the money. It's the corporate money. They're so groomed by the corporate money and the corporate donors that an AOC or a Bernie or a Zoran Mamdani, anyone who's a bit different, who shakes shit up, their donors get freaked out and they will spend more time and money aligning themselves with Cuomo than accepting a Mamdani or a Graham Planter or others. I want to ask you this before I let you go, and thanks so much. We
Sure.
have 1,200 people watching. This is Stuart Stevens, one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, or the Republican advisor, a man who wrote, what was the name of the book? I really enjoyed your book. I read it. We
Um,
talked about it.
it was all a lie how the Republican Party became Donald Trump.
It was a really good book, and the reason I appreciate it is Stewart, unlike some other folks, really owned it. He talks about why he joined the Republican Party, what he believed, and his kind of awakening. And there was also a type of like, I mean, this is me, of course, editorializing. Please disagree with me if this wasn't how you felt, but I felt a sense of regret and a sense of, well, let me use the rest of my life and my experience making things better, right? This is how I was hoodwinked. This is what I was aiming for, but nope, this is who they always were. Speaking about the Republican Party, right now, Stuart, I see fissures. I don't think they're as strong as corporate media or
Yeah.
Democrats make him out to be. I don't think Trump is as strong. I think he's physically weak. We haven't seen him do the rallies. We have the cankles. He looks terrible. The blotch. He's falling asleep. We've seen the Latinos who voted for him flee back to the 2016 numbers. The young people who voted
Younger
for him,
voters. Yep.
yeah, gone. The young people who have the people I just talked about, who have no fidelity to any party, gone. His numbers are in the tank, negative double digits on the economy, negative on Epstein. I believe, and I think the last 2 weeks has shown it, that they are accelerating what was supposed to be a 4-year Project 2025 plan to 10 months because they realize their avatar, their daddy, might die. So they will try to get as much power as possible and give it to doughboy JD Vance. Your take about where the Republican Party is and where they are taking this country in the next 5 months?
Well, look, I think the Republican Party declared war on the future, and that you're trying to stop America from becoming what it is. I mean, there is some sweet irony in knowing that Stephen Miller's kids are going to grow up in a minority majority America,
Mm,
and all the Stephen Millers in the world aren't going to stop that.
mm,
And you know, the great tragedy of the Republican Party is that we became a white party. 1956, Eisenhower got 39% of the black vote. Then he goes to Goldwater, who opposed civil rights. He got 7%.
mm.
And I think that something happened. I've thought about this a lot recently. Why is it that all of these Republicans have people? I know a lot of these people well. I helped elect a lot of them. Why is it? These are people who 10 years ago wouldn't let Donald Trump in their home.
Yep.
Literally, like their wives sort of like, you think we're going to have that guy in our house? We have kids. Are you crazy? No. And now they've just been. I think that we did something in the Republican Party that rewarded weakness, that rewarded compliance, that you rise through compliance. It's your turn. It's your next. So you do that for decades, and what happens? It's like a genetic experiment. You end up with a breed of politicians who are tragically weak. And all of the stuff that we said that we were for, that we held as bedrock beliefs, turned out to be just marketing slogans. And when Trump emerged, there was this sort of division among anti-Trumpers. Did Trump hijack the Republican Party or did Trump reveal the Republican Party?
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
the thing, I really wanted to believe they hijacked the party. But the problem
The,
is
the
the
latter. The latter.
hijacker, the hijacker is not popular on the plane. You're not sitting on the plane and going, okay, we're not going to go to grandma's. We're going to go to Cuba. Great. Love it. No, nobody likes the hijacker. And the Republican Party loves Donald Trump. And, it's a separate conversation, a longer conversation. But I really think in the post World War II Republican Party, there were two strands: an Eisenhower strand, sane, governing, boring, and a Joe McCarthy strand, crazy, conspiratorial, xenophobic, mostly racist. And there were a lot of us who were drawn to George Bush, who thought that we were the dominant gene. I mean, literally, like me and Nicole Wallace and Matthew Dowd and Mark McKinnon and Michael Gerson, who tragically died. We used to all sit in the same room. Pete Wayner.
Yeah.
I think we thought this idea of compassion, conservatism, and all of this, what we were what the future of the party was. And I don't know any conclusion to come to, but we were wrong. We were the
Mm,
recessive gene, and
mhm.
the party became what it wanted to be. And if you remember after Romney lost, the party went through that so-called autopsy where
I do
analyzed why are
remember.
we losing? And the conclusions weren't dramatic, but we have to do better with non-white voters. We have to do better with appealing to younger voters. Have to do better with women, particularly those that work outside the home and are not married. And but if you go back and you read that, it was presented not just as a political necessity, but as a moral mandate. That if you're going to earn the right to govern this big, cacophonous, changing, conflicting country, you needed to be more like it. So then Trump came along, and you could hear this audible sigh of relief, like, thank fucking God we don't have to pretend we believe in this shit. We can just win with white people.
Yeah.
And
It could be all in misogyny, all in racism, all in cruelty, all in greed. I am going to invite you back for this deeper question, but it ties into what was going to be my final question. You teed me up perfectly. And I'm so happy. And I said this before on the show. When a person of color, Stuart, talks about white supremacy and racism, we aren't really taken as seriously as when white folks do. We're seen as radical, crazy, whining, complaining. We had Obama, we have Oprah. What are you talking about? Okay. When white men, especially, say, you know what, we might have a white supremacy or racism problem, this country reacts differently, especially when conservative white men say it. They're like, oh, maybe that darky Waj wasn't crazy. Maybe he's onto something, right? And unfortunately, this is the world's worst I told you so because I've been saying that Donald Trump reveals reveals the twin sins of America that we have been unable to
Mhm.
confront and truly destroy. White supremacy, capitalism, specifically greed and racism. He is the manifestation of that in orange, corpulent, cankled form. America's sins manifested in flesh that was able to rise among the Republican Party and destroy this country. Civil War. Hey, can we stop enslaving black people? No. Let's just destroy the country. Hey, civil rights movement. Can we just have black kids and brown kids and white kids together? No, no segregation. And I'm going to literally drain swimming pools. They used to drain swimming pools in this country rather than integrate them. Can you have, we might not like Hillary Clinton. No one's really excited about her. Competent woman, far more qualified than Donald Trump. Can you have Hillary Clinton? We'll take this freak, this guy who's bankrupted casinos. Kamala Harris, a black Indian woman, versus a guy who incited a violent insurrection and destroyed our comedy. Let's go for the white guy who makes us feel better. I want to invite you again for this, but I have to ask you about this. I believe, and I'm so glad you mentioned racism because a lot of people avoid it. Me and my co host Danielle talk about it all the time because I think it's all part and parcel of MAGA. When everyone says it's distraction, I say, Stuart, it's yes and.
The
It's not
essence
just
of it.
distraction, it's part and parcel of the cultural grievance. It's part and parcel of the movement. It's part and parcel of the end game, right? Um, your take on white supremacy and unfettered greed as the sins of this country manifested through Trump and now the Republican Party.
Yeah. Well, listen, brother, you're talking to a seventh generation Mississippian named for Jeb Stuart.
Yeah.
And you talk about these swimming pools. Our neighborhood swimming pool in Jackson, Mississippi, they did fill it in. And I'll say this for my parents. It makes them sound they were very middle class, but they built the swimming pool and they opened it to everybody who wanted to come as a result of that.
Mm,
And Trumpism is a white power movement. I mean, what kills me about the way we cover it is this hesitancy to call that out. So we say Trump won working class voters. No, he won white working class voters. We say Trump evangelicals are for Trump. No, white evangelicals. Black evangelicals are against him at the highest percent of any group that there is. And there's sort of this marginalization that we aren't going to say what is doing it. Look, Trump's coalition in 20 was 85% white. All right, he did a little better in 24, it's 84% white. That's in a country that's 59% white, less so since we've been talking. Um, and I think that Trump, I, you can argue, did he make people more racist? I tend to go that he gave permission for people to reveal that they're racist.
yeah, I
And
agree.
it, it's a, this was always a darkness in the Republican Party. when I worked in it. We didn't do better with blacks, but at least we saw it as a failure. You know, Ken Millman, who was chairman of the party, went to the NAACP in 2005 and gave a speech apologizing for the Southern strategy, which in many ways was the essence of this racism. Now, does that matter? I think it does because that's a first step into admitting that you've done something that's wrong. Um, and I don't know. I Republicans are very good at yelling at the ref and convincing journalists that they have to bend over backwards to prove that they aren't biased. But this is another conversation I'd love to have. But I think that we've seen the collapse of the journalism model as we knew it.
Yeah, it's done.
Generations of journalists grew up with the greatest good was objectivity. How do you tell both sides of a lie? And that is what is broken apart. It was always based upon some sense that there could be some goodwill on both sides. There is no goodwill on the Republican side. Um, and that's why I think that so much like what you're doing, what's all this sort of new journalism, it's because the old models have failed. Um, but look, uh, I don't know, man. Look, my home state, Jackson, Mississippi. The governor's mansion of Mississippi is in downtown Jackson, right? You go out the door, you're in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. That governor, Tate Reeves, sends 200 National Guards to Washington
Yeah.
when the murder rate is one third what it is, literally when he steps out his door. So if the National Guard are really going to help, dude, how come he didn't put them in downtown Jackson? You know,
6 former Confederate states have decided to send their National Guard to
yes.
terrorize Washington, D.C., even as FEMA employees are warning of, quote, Katrina-like disasters that might befall these very same
What?
states.
Listen, what was? I grew up with the lost cause. I grew up in the era in which really was at the heart of the lost cause of reinventing what Confederacy was about. This sort of noble lost cause that was a Confederacy. Instead of no, it was a bunch of traitors who went to war for the right to own people. And the fact that it's 2025, they're having a debate about slavery inside the Republican Party, whether or not. I mean,
It
go
was that
back and
bad?
read
It
the
wasn't that bad.
articles. Go back and read the articles of secession for every one of these Confederate states. Everyone mentioned slavery. They wanted you to know this is what they were fighting for. And, what has been the result? Mississippi in 1960 was the fifth wealthiest state in the Union, in the country. 1966, 1866, it was the poorest. It's the poorest today. So this is, uh,
And if you all want a book that puts a pin on what Stuart's seeing, a great book that I always recommend is Jonathan Metzl's "Dying of Whiteness."
yeah.
Yeah, he's in these lives in these southern states where literally, what Stuart's talking about is these folks. Some of these folks would rather die, literally die. He interviewed them where they said, "I would rather die than take Obamacare," and he died. And you're seeing and I've always said this, Stuart, if people watch this show, white supremacy is very destructive, but ultimately it is self-destructive. And another analogy that I gave that Jonathan also shares is if given a choice between sharing a house with me and say a white person, these Republicans, let's call them out, these Republicans, instead of choosing to burn down the house, they'll burn down the village. And that's what we're seeing with America. They've chosen to burn down the village of America instead of just sharing this country. And the last thing I'll say, Stuart, before I let you go, and I thank for the nearly 1,500 people watching. I was supposed to talk to Stuart for 35 minutes. I lost track of time, man. I'm so sorry. Thanks for spending time. Is I'm not a sociopath, Stuart, believe it or not. I do not need people to suffer in order to feel great again. I want to repeat this. I do not need people to suffer in order to feel great again. I want these Republicans to have health care. I want their kids to have a great education like you and I did. I want them to be optimistic about the future. I want them to share the swimming pool with my kids. You might not agree with me, that's fine. I want you to walk the street with a smile on your face and with economic and physical security. I want your kids to be happy, but they need to see me suffer in order to feel great.
Look,
And that's the difference.
the piece I think I always ask myself, what of all that's being written in this era, what are the pieces, that are gonna be read 50 years from now? And the piece, in Atlantic, "Cruelty is the point," I think was it,
Yeah, by
uh,
Adam Server.
by Adam Serwer. I think just is absolutely summed it up. Um, listen, man, go back and read George Bush's acceptance speech at the 2000 convention. It reads like an artifact from a lost civilization. It's all about compassion, service. That guy couldn't get 5% of the vote in the Republican Party now. And, when I was working in Romney, we could always see that there was a group of white voters who could care less what we were talking about, this kind of boring stuff about jobs or Russia or whatever. But if you were willing to go out and sort of wave the bloody shirt, they would be for you. And what I would have predicted is if you did that, and now people have a better sense of Romney. I think they see, say what you will, whether they like his politics or not, he wasn't going to go that way. But I would have thought you would lose white voters, more white voters are college educated if you went out and appealed to the blatantly to the racist. And that was happening in 16 right up until the Comey letter. And once the Comey letter came out, enough came out. And now we've normalized this,
Yep.
you know? And it's extraordinarily, as I say to my Republican friends, it's crazy to say this is 1936 Germany when it's so clearly 1938, you know? And that is what is at stake here. And when I worked in Republican, I should have seen this. And this is what the reason I wrote it was all a lie is because after Trump won, and a lot of people were wrong about Trump. It's really hard to find anybody more wrong than me. I didn't think that he was going to win the primary. I didn't think he'd win the general. When he did, I said, like, why is it that I didn't see this?
Mm,
Because, there's a trope of books people write about Washington and politics, like, why didn't they listen to me? I couldn't write that book because they did listen to me. I was the most successful Republican consultant. I helped elect governors and senators in over half the country, right? I had 5 presidential races, and I never saw this. And in that sort of high school English teacher way that if you can't write it, don't understand it. That's what led me to start asking myself this, which ultimately led to writing It Was All a Lie. And that's why I called it that. I just think that, and the one thing that drew me to the Republican Party more than anything else was a sense of personal responsibility, which turned out to be a lie. As it turns out, Donald Trump never takes responsibility for anything. But that's why I said that, like, the first sentence in that book basically is blame me.
mm,
I should have seen this. It wasn't them that failed. I failed. We failed. And I think that we have a inordinate responsibility to try to correct what we did. And I can't undo electing these people.
mm.
But this is what the Lincoln Project is about. A group of us, we have these certain skills. We're not bad at this shit. And we're using it as best we can to fight Trumpism.
Stuart, I appreciate it. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate the contrition. I think that's what people appreciate as well. I always believe that I'm radical when it comes to redemption and forgiveness. I feel that I have to be. You need to give people an off ramp always. And what I always tell people, I end with this, and they know my analogy before, if you're joining us for the first time, the analogy I give is this to reconcile everything that you said. I don't think we're going to win over 100%. I think we've lost 30% of this country from my
Yeah.
lifetime. I think they're too far gone. I'm trying to mobilize the 70%, and the 70%, that's fine by me. That 70% is the majority. That caravan can move forward and move us forward.
Yeah.
However, how do I reconcile it? Because I really mean what I said. Despite their cruelty, their pain, their racism, their Islamophobia, their hatred, I can't become like them. So what I say is the following. The caravan moves forward. The door will be open. My hand will be outstretched, but it's up to them to come on board. Reciprocity. And if they don't, Stuart, I don't have time, and we got to move forward because I got kids. Uh, Lincoln Square. Yes, invite me anytime you want. I think one of your admins has told me that. Folks, this has been Stuart Stevens of the Lincoln Project, using Lincoln Square, Substack. Go subscribe, folks. They're fighting against Trump and Republicans, their former party, which has revealed their basest, most racist instincts that threatens now to destroy the United States from within and also attack our allies abroad. Stewart's book is fantastic. His memoir, I strongly recommend people picking it up. This is Left Hook. I have no paywalls because I'm a terrible capitalist. Become a subscriber. If you have a few bucks, give a few bucks. I have 800 kids. Stuart, it's impossible to get him on because he's always traveling, but he said yes immediately. So I'm like, I can't miss this up. I hope you come back anytime, Stuart. This will be up on the Lincoln Square and in my website later tonight. For those who have missed our conversation, there's 1,500 folks. We go, and I want to give a shout out to Stuart's piece. I will link to it. Stewart's piece just came out September 4th on Zateo. Very good piece. My plea to Democrats: stop being polite, go nuclear. And he gives actual tangible recommendations that I wholeheartedly support. Folks, be kind, be empathetic, be decent, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Stewart, have a good weekend, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Take care, man.